I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, December the 19th, brought to you in part by Bovalus Vision. It's a clostridial vaccine that spurs cattle forward and never backward. And every time you buy a bottle of it, it enters you into a monthly drawing to win a custom Greeley Hatworks cowboy hat. For more information, go to powered-by-spur.com. Also, Beaver County Stockyards in Beaver, Oklahoma, no sale here today on Tuesday. They're going to be closed down this Tuesday and next Tuesday, and then their first sale back will be January the 2nd. On that sale, January the 2nd, they're looking for a big run, 5,000 to 6,000 cattle at least, and they are going to be doing a fundraiser for a local youth named Baker McDonald that's there from Beaver, who has found out recently that he has leukemia, and they're going to be raising money for him. So don't forget about that sale. Big sale, Beaver County Stockyard, first day back after the holiday break, January the 2nd. Cash trade Trickle. So I want you guys to listen to this. If you don't listen to anything else, I know you're waiting for the top quote for the day, and don't pull ahead with your thumb there at the bottom of the screen quite yet. But last week we had the lightest weekly cash negotiated trade that we've had any week this year. And we also had the heaviest slaughter that we've had any week this year. Those two coinciding together is kind of a head scratcher. And you know that it just burns me up that packers won't, practice in any kind of negotiated cash trade. They'll pay more for cattle in Nebraska where they're buying them cheaper, and then spend $4 or $5 more hauling them to Kansas rather than giving the guys in Kansas an extra buck or two that they're asking for. I think that's an unfair trade practice. I think they do all kinds of unfair trade practices. You know, that's what we sink our teeth into, is our negotiated cash trade. Most of your cattle raisers, your cattle producers, your cattle feeders, unless they're in bed with the packers and they're working up some type of a formula deal once a year, and they're basically in bed with them doing that. But the whole livestock industry is based off of cash trade. Packers do not want to participate in cash trade. Cash negotiated trade includes competition. That's the part that they don't like about it, is the competition. And I don't understand why they're shrugging so much of it off. They've got it exactly where they want it. They're buying the plainest cattle, the lowest quality cattle, and the plainest cattle in the southern plains. They're buying them in big droves, and then that sets the market. In the northern plains, they get to buy higher quality cattle up there at a discount to what they're giving in the southern plains. I mean, it works fantastic for them. And then they do everything they can to keep that cash negotiated FOB live weighted average price in your 5 area down or within each region. They work to keep that as low as they can possibly keep it. And then pretty much all the rest of the cattle that they buy, and that they're buying a very small percentage. In Texas, it would be 5 or 6%. In Kansas, it might be 8 or 10%. In Nebraska, it might be 28 to 30%. In Iowa, it's somewhere around 50%. They're buying a small percentage of the cattle as cheap as they can absolutely get them, keeping that weighted average price low, and then they get to buy all the rest of the cattle based off of that negotiated weighted average price that they work so hard to keep down. That's the Packers playbook, guys. And look it up if you don't believe that. That's exactly the way things go. But the livestock industry is based off of negotiated cash trade. That's what they feel comfortable with. Packing houses don't have windows. Wouldn't it be nice if they had windows and we could get up there and look in and see how bad they were screwing us? But we can't do that. We can't look in there and see. Most of us don't understand all the ins and outs of the packing industry and all the different ways that they're screwing us anyway. So we just try to cling on to this cash trade, which they do less and less and less and less of every week. Last week, your guys in the Southern Plains, and like I said, in Texas and Kansas, you could put them all in one of them Dodge quad cab pickups. You could put all of your negotiated cash traders in the Southern Plains in one of those big quad cab pickups. And they decided, you know what? If they crashed this fat cattle market because the board was lower, well, the board ain't lower no more. So we're tired of taking less for our cattle. There was no reason other than that board being lower that we had to take less for our fat cattle. We're not going to take any lower. And so, you know, and the guys, the farmer feeders that trade once or twice a year, and some guys up there went ahead and started puking cattle to them, 165, 67, maybe 168. And the guys in the Southern Plains said, no, I don't think that's right. I just really don't think that's right. Well, they're short of cattle in the Southern Plains, short of high quality cattle in the Southern Plains. They start loading up those cattle in Nebraska, putting freight, putting diesel, putting wheels under them, and hauling them down to Kansas plants to have them slaughtered to fill slots down there. And the guys in Kansas and Texas, you know, they still said every day of the week last week, no, we're not going to take it. You know, 171 was the price we had the previous week. And then whenever they hadn't sold anything at all by late Friday afternoon, and the guys had been busy watching NFR all week, and they finally said, yeah, I'd probably sell some cattle at 170. Bang, here they start selling some cattle at 170. But a lot of the guys said, you know what, screw you. I'm not going to take it any less. You know, you guys need cattle as bad as I need to sell them, or worse. Screw you, we're not going to do it anymore. So we didn't trade hardly anything last week. I mean, next to nothing. 35,000 cattle in the entire 5-area feeding region. That is nothing. Joplin had over 10,000 feeder cattle at their sale on Monday. It's nothing. In the entire nation, we had negotiated cash trade last week of 44,000. It's nothing. I tell you what, in the late 90s when I was working with Market News in the Amarillo USDA office, we'd get 100,000 cash negotiated sales every week. Every week, every week, every week. And by the time you pulled your 5 areas together, we got about 500,000. That's about how many slaughter steers and heifers we slaughter each week. We had pretty good trade. But we have just continued to whittle and whittle and whittle. And it's mostly the fault of your big corporate feeders that have been forced. I'm not saying, early on they did it because they thought they were going to get ahead of their neighbor. Oh, I'm going to get me a sweetheart deal over here. I'm not going to have to worry about when my cattle are ready, and I'm going to get them sold. But in the last 10 years, your big feeding outfits that have joined in were forced to join in and crawl in bed with one of the big 4 packers. If not, they could not compete. And I've seen it in all the major feeding areas. Those that tried to stay independent and sell on the open cash market, they've just dropped like flies because they couldn't get rid of the cattle when they needed to get rid of them. And it eventually forced them all out. And, that's what happened with your pork industry. Once they didn't need the independent feeders anymore, they just got rid of them. They just flushed them out. And they're just about to that point here, guys. And, and I said, well, all the hogs are made by, contract growers. What do you corporate feeders think that you are? I don't care how big you are. I don't care if it's your name on the sign. But if all the cattle are under their control, they know when you buy them, they know what you're feeding them, they know where they're at in the progression of getting finished, and then they call for them when they want for them. For the most part, they do that too. You work for them. You're just supplying labor for them. They've got control of your cattle. You might own the cattle on paper, but you really don't have control of them anymore. You never have, for the most part. But it's a frustrating deal, and I tell you what, if we don't do something, I've talked about Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. NCBA doesn't want it because TCFA and Kansas Livestock Association don't want it, and they run NCBA. They told them they don't want it, and then we're not going to have it, and so we're not going to have it. Why is that? Because your big corporate feeders that are in bed with them, they run those organizations. So we're just going to sit here until eventually it's not even feasible for people with property or people with a feed yard or people with their own grain to feed have that option like they used to in the hogs, and they don't have it anymore. So it's a really sickening thing to watch here. Let's talk about your board. To open the week, we saw December live cattle futures up 60 cents at 168.82. February up 27 cents at 169.62. Back months on live cattle up 57 to up 97. Board's been very cooperative and friendly here. It makes us think maybe this bigger market that we have right now just has bigger corrections. January feeder cattle up 227 at 223.17. March up 197 at 224.15. Your back months up 205 to up 285. Your corn for March down 6 cents at 4.77 a bushel. January beans up 8.5 at 13.40. Kansas City hard red winter wheat for March down 15 cents at 6.27 3/4. Your weighted average on last week's menial, disgraceful, just a little smidge of nothing, negotiated cash trade based on 35,100 head of sales in the entire 5-area feedlot region, negotiated cash. That compares to 55,400 the week before, which was disgraceful, and 65,900 the same week a year ago, and that wasn't shit. But your live sales, cash sales of fat steers and heifers in your 5-area feeding region ranged from 165 to 170. That is $1 to $2 lower, with the board up big. Your weighted average on live steers 168.71, down 123. Your dressed trade ranged from 264 to 270, $1 to $2 lower. Dressed steer weighted average in the 5-area was 267.53, $2.10 lower than the previous week's dressed weighted average. For the most part, your market in the northern plains was $1 to $2 lower, from 167 to 170. Your dress trade was steady to 4 lower, from 267 to 268. Southern plains had just a little dribble of trade there at the end of the week after everything was over, and they just refused to take less, and then finally said, screw it, you guys can wait till next week. $1 lower at 170. Nationwide 44,200 compared to 66,400 the previous week, 74,600 the same week a year ago. Of the 44,200, only 19% were for the 2 to 4 week delivery. Negotiated grid sales total 35,600. These are your other ways to sell cattle. You got negotiated cash, then negotiated grid, which is the second best way to do it, but there's no negotiation. It's basically just grid, 35,600. Forward contracts, not a big way to sell fat cattle, is 12,500 last week. And Formula Sweetheart sales, 266,100 head. That's why we have no leverage in the fat cattle trade. Of your 4 out of 5 areas that trade enough to where we can actually see it, Colorado doesn't do enough for us to even see what's going on from the USDA reports. Iowa sold 13,700 last week. They typically sell 30. Nebraska sold 12,800 last week. They typically sell 35. Kansas sold 6,000 last week. They would typically sell 15 to 20. Texas sold 2,700. Any sale barn you drive by this time of year has 2,700 cattle a week, And all the feedlots in Texas only sold 2,700 cattle, negotiated cash, where you actually haggle on the price. Now they would typically sell 10 to 12,000. Box beef cutout values were mixed again. Choice cuts down 271 at 288.93. Selects up 290 at 263.72. Your slaughter started out this week at a normal pace, 125,000, 1,000 less than last week through one day, and must have had a shutdown or a breakdown or something same week a year ago, because they only slaughtered 99,000. I want to talk to you about Bassett Livestock Auction in Bassett, Nebraska. Good friends there. Probably the highest premium auction that we have in these United States. They've got a big bred cow special, replacement stock special, coming up here Wednesday, tomorrow, the 20th. And they've got 3,500 head on offer. They will all be fancy. Fancy, fancy, fancy. They've got 1,100 big fancy bred heifers. They've got, of course, some Black Angus. They've got some F1 Black Baldies. They've got some Red Angus bred heifers there. And all of them will be as good as you can find anywhere, guys. And then they've got several, like 5 big dispersals, complete herd dispersals, which is where, there's no trader cows or anything in a deal like that. These are all dispersals. I mean, selling them all. And each of those dispersals, of those 4 or 5, will have several hundred head. And they'll be running ages from young cows to older. But you got to get on that sale. It's on DVAuction.com. It'll be Wednesday, tomorrow. 3,500 head. Just get on and watch. If you think you might want to bid on something, call them early and tell them you want to be approved. But also, tell you what else is going on. Night Latch Group. Of course, that's Andy Cunningham right there in western Oklahoma. And I tell you what, with these out front futures climbing, and we've been seeing the nearby climbing too, but the out front are really climbing out there. Keep your eye out there and pay attention, guys. We know how fast they can take this market away from us. Night Latch Group can help you get a hold of that market and keep it. They can sell you LRP. If you're interested in learning more about the LGM or livestock gross margin policies, they do a lot of those, guys. But you got to take care of yourself. For more information, go to nightlatch.net. Let's talk about your feeder cattle markets, real-time index on DVAuction. Late in the day on Monday, sitting at 221.58, up $1.37. So gaining, and it was gaining late last week, gaining to start this week on some big high volume, just commodity cattle sales. CME cash feeder cattle index last available was 218.15. Biggest sales on Monday, high volume sales, Joplin Regional Stockyards in Carthage, Missouri. 10,400 head. They sold them in less than 12 hours, people. All through the ring. Now just think about that for a little bit. They started at 6, they were done before 6. They don't sell all night long. They sell big strings of them, guys. And they sell every kind that there is. They got the fanciest cattle. They've got some cattle there that you would think were pretty plain. And then they've got a ton in between. But it's just, they sell cattle, guys, and they've all got a value, and they'll all bring all of that value at Joplin Regional Stockyards. Their market, feeder steers were $7 to $18 higher. Feeder heifers were $5 to $17 higher. And you think, oh my God, there's some more of those wild trends that I always complain about. No, I completely agreed with the trend after looking at and analyzing the market there. Missouri Department of Ag does a great job reporting the market. And don't forget, they've got a big cow sale here tomorrow on Wednesday. Probably going to have 2,500 replacement stock. Going to have a huge weigh-up sale before that. All kinds of bred cows and pairs. Got several big consignments of fancy bred heifers there in southwest Missouri. If you're interested in that. They're coming back from the holiday on January the 2nd. You think that's a Tuesday. Can't change the day. Hey, they don't have brand inspectors in Southwest Missouri. You can have it whatever day you want. They're going to have it on January the 2nd on a Tuesday, so you still have an opportunity to get that market before anything happens to it after the holidays there, and then coming back the Thursday right after the holidays with a big weanback special. You think they don't market cattle? Right there at Carthage, Missouri at Joplin Regional Stockyards. Look at this automated market report through Joplin Regional Stockyards. This comes through Cattle Market Central, but this is your NationalBeefWire stick-out sale of the day. Look at all the best tested weights. They were all very well tested. 637 head of 5-weight steer calves. They averaged 558. Weighted average price $261.71. 12.5 bucks higher. Nearly 900 6-weight steers average 652 at 234.80. That's 12.5 bucks higher. Guess what? The steer calves in lower Midwest are 12.5 bucks higher. 982 head of 7-weight steers average 736 at 225.12. Those are 15 bucks higher. With a good test last week and a good test this week. 2,714 head of 8-weight steers in one sale barn. Are you shitting me? They averaged 848 with a weighted average price of $216.65, $7.20 higher. 929 head of 9-weight steers averaged 916 at 209. That's 7 bucks higher. The yearling feeder steers were 7 bucks higher in the lower Midwest, guys. How about the heifers? 796 head of 5-weight heifers averaged 551 at 223.44, 13 bucks higher. 646 head of 6-weight heifers averaged 638 at 211.33, 8 bucks higher. 1,141 head of 7-weight heifers in Joplin averaged 737 at 207.03, 14 bucks higher. Very impressive sale there. Hold that market up. They found that market early in the morning, held it there all day, got done. Everybody checked out and got home for supper. How about another big sale? Oklahoma's National Stockyards in Oklahoma City. 5,200 head. Not nearly as big, but still a good sale there. And they will be closed the next 2 weeks. So coming back on January the 8th for their first sale. But Oklahoma National Stockyards feeder steers were 2 to 5 bucks higher. Feeder heifers were mostly steady. Steer calves 4 to 8 bucks higher. Heifer calves were mostly steady. Backgrounders were buying, your wheat guys were buying the calves. They mostly want the steers. They were higher. It looked to me like northern interests were coming down and picking around on the feeders because they like the steers. But stick-out sale at Oklahoma City. National Livestock Commission firm sold 60 head of steers, weighed 760 at 230.50. Another individual quote, how about West Point Livestock Auction, West Point, Nebraska. That's the Shavens family right there. Friends of mine, they had a heifer sale. Well, they had a feeder sale, but their heifers topped the market. 120 head of yearling heifers, feeder heifers, weighed 836 and bring 218.50. But your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day, come out of Joplin. You said I thought Joplin didn't sell them high. How about 231 of the best black fancy 813-pound steers you can buy, bring 230.50. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.